The early history of Chillingham Castle is really quite vague. Founded in Northumberland, close to the England-Scotland border, the castle is over 800 years old, but nothing of its construction seems to be known. The castle reportedly began life in the 12th century as a monastery and first entered the history books in 1298 when Edward I of England visited the building on his way to battle in Scotland. It's important to remember, of course, that the United Kingdom as we know it today has only existed for a little over 300 years. Prior to 1707, England and Scotland were two completely separate nations, which spent a great deal of their history at war with one another, and that, naturally, put Chillingham Castle in a strategically important location. This made the property a target, and it was subjected to repeated attacks by Scottish forces. In 1344, King Edward III issued a license to fortify the building and add battlements, upgrading what was once a humble monastery to a fully fledged and fortified castle. The next few centuries are, again, rather vague, with little historic record existing outside of occasional visits from reigning monarchs, including a visit from James I and VI as he travelled from Scotland to England for his English coronation. He was, of course, the first to rule as king of both England and Scotland, providing a personal union of the two countries, although they would continue to exist independently in every other sense. As the relationship between England and Scotland grew peaceful, the castle underwent changes that transformed it from a fortified base of war to a more residential property, although it would once again become embroiled in conflict when it became home to British soldiers during the Second World War. Following the war, the house fell into disrepair until it was purchased in 1982 by Humphrey Wakefield, who set to work restoring the castle. It has since been opened to the public, and the building's reputation as the most haunted castle in the country has become a huge selling point and helped to propel the castle to huge success as a visitor attraction. The most famous ghost of Chillingham Castle is known as the Blue Boy. This ghost initially gained notoriety in its non-corporeal form, as it would present itself as orbs or halos of blue light. Then, in 1920, a body was discovered encased in a wall in a room known as the Pink Room. The body was found to have belonged to a young boy, although his exact age seems to be lost to time. Rumours spawned from this discovery that the boy was sealed up in the wall while he was still alive, and that the quiet sound of scratching could still be heard within the walls. Once the body of the boy was exhumed and reburied in a proper ceremony, appearances of his ghost were said to have stopped altogether, although they have begun to re-emerge in recent years, a phenomenon likely related to the growing popularity of this story as Chillingham Castle becomes an increasingly popular visitor attraction. Another ghost in the castle is known as the White Pantry Ghost, and was said to have appeared to a footman who was hired to guard the silver stored in the inner pantry. The footman's job was essentially to sleep with the silver each night in order to ensure that no one broke into the locked inner pantry. One night he was awoken by a woman in white who asked for a glass of water. The footman obliged until he remembered that the door to the inner pantry was locked and it was impossible that any woman could have gotten in. Turning back to her, he found that she'd vanished entirely. Some have said that the ghost's thirst is an evidence that she met her end through poison. But there's little more than rumour behind this particular ghost, as even the century this story takes place seems to be unclear. One big source of paranormal activity in Chillingham Castle, though, is said to be the dungeons beneath the building, where prisoners were reportedly tortured and starved, with some sources suggesting that the occupants were even driven to cannibalism. Rumour has it, you can look down through the trapdoor in the floor and into the dungeon below, and lock eyes with the remains of a young girl staring back at you. Finally, the ghost of Lady Berkeley, who is married to one of the former owners of the castle, is said to roam the halls at night, leaving behind her a chill in the air. It is said that the ghost continues to search for her husband, who, in life, abandoned Lady Berkeley for another woman. This story was memorably shared by Lady Berkeley herself, in an episode of the ghost hunting show, Most Haunted, which visited Chillingham Castle, way back in its second episode in 2002. In that episode, medium Derek Akura claimed to have made contact with the spirit of Lady Berkeley and recounted part of her story as a jilted lover. The late Derek Akura, on the other hand, has long since been discredited after being caught faking some of his supernatural abilities. But nonetheless, Chillingham Castle's stories remain entertaining and engrossing, and the building continues to draw visitors who are eager to visit the most haunted castle in England. You just heard an excerpt from the Zoinks podcast. Search for Zoinks on your favourite podcast app to hear it in full, or subscribe here on YouTube for highlights and bonus videos. And remember to tap the bell to make sure you don't miss anything. You can also find a bunch of extra content on our website, daffodillies.co.uk/zoinks.